white every day on site. And so there was a rumor that it's a Isikadro. Listen to the story.
Oh.
So the people of Elmina, they thought I was working. I had a white little car, Suzuki. They said, Papa, white and Quenty Isikadro.
That drone white.
That drone white. And I had my cousin from a Kropong,
exactly,
to Elmina to work with me on this job for 2 years. We lived there for 2 years. All of a sudden, my cousin began wearing white also, you know.
Hey.
But then he wore
the cult has caught up with him.
Listen to this. He wore it for 3 months and then he stopped. So the boys on the side were laughing at him because they said, Niskasa. When you say white, you know, it's your laundry bill, so if you can't do it,
don't try it.
You know?
Don't try it. Mentro. What's me spelling? Who's that? So what's what warrior? No what to operate.
Thank you.
But say what's me to operate? Take your time. We see Jenny.
Yes.
Take your time. And the voice you heard telling that story of the white nurse is the renowned architect. As you can tell, I mean, he's already, exposed where he's coming from, mentioning the Kropong and all. So we are talking to Mr. Joe Osae Addo.
Yes.
And Mr. Joe Osae Addo, this morning, we're having you on the Asase Breakfast Show. Very privileged so to do. And between Kweku Inshira Addo and myself, Benjamin Osae Addo,
yes,
we are hosting you, Joe Osae Addo. It is the show of the Addos this morning. This
morning, an architect, sent me a message that, what is your Kropong name? What's your real name? Now, Joe, what you used to know. And I said, my name is Joe, Kofi Osae Addo.
Kofi Osae Addo. Oh, like mine.
Kofi Osae Addo.
That makes better sense. Kofi Osae Addo. Yes. Mine is Yao Ofe Addo. Kweku Addo. Inshira Addo. Here we find ourselves. Mr. Osae Addo, you are welcome to the Asase Breakfast Show.
Thank you so much.
Opening.
You are the rainmaker. I sent you a text. In 30 minutes, we had the show.
Interesting. And we're happy to have you on the Asase Breakfast Show. And we have been celebrating a number of people who have blazed the trail, who have trod the path to greatness. And we're excited to have you tell your own story in your endeavors as an architect, as a student of life, having walked the various phases or various spaces on this earth, and now you find yourself here. If for the person who is uninitiated, when they say or they mention the name Joe Osae Addo, who is Joe Osae Addo?
Well, I'm going to tell the story of how my architecture life started. You know, my late father was called Reverend L.H.S. Osae Addo, okay? And the
Methodist superintendent.
Methodist. So the summer of 1982, I'm in Achimota School.
Okay.
And that summer, I said, I'm going to Brochi, London for sure, 100%. You know, I've been saying the whole summer.
1982.
82.
Achimota.
I left 82. But yeah, so I've been bugging my dad the whole summer. That was the year that Rawlings came, that year before, right? So,
that's taking over from Liman.
Yes. So things were, everybody, boys, everybody was leaving. If you can go abroad, you had to go. So I've been bugging my dad the whole summer. Then one day at breakfast, I thought he would always brush me off, you know. So just stop that. Then one day we're sitting at breakfast. He was in a good mood. So I said, I want to go to London again. My usual carping, you know. Then he was very calm and he said, come to my office downstairs. His office was downstairs. We lived in Jamestown in those days. So I went downstairs, and in those days you didn't need a visa to go to London. He wrote me a check, Ghana Airways. That night I was on the plane to London.
Wow.
Could you imagine? I get to London on holidays and I'm hoping to come back and go to Tech Architecture School. I get to London, my sister says, Joe, there's a great school in London that you should just go and apply to, you know? And I said, but we have, you know, we couldn't transfer money from Ghana. Rawlings had blocked all money transfers. So my sister said, just go and put your name down. So I walked into this school in Bedford Square, central London. And it was a private school, very expensive school. And I walked in there and I told the registrar, I want to come to this school. And she said, but your A levels are not here. You don't have your results. And I said, yes, true. And she said, but we are starting school in a week or two. She said to me.
Indicated.
I said, I still, I said, I'm just putting my name there. And then the most incredible thing happened. She said, go around London, take your sketchbook, which I still carry a sketchbook every day, and sketch buildings and come back in a week. And I did. I came back with my sketchbook. I walked into this building, this room. I've never seen so many white people in a room like this before. And I said that they interviewed me and they accepted me. And that's how I started my architecture school.
Not having received your A-level certificate.
They look at my doodles and they took me in. And the rest,
action at ground.
That day, I think that the prayers from, the Methodist prayers were working overtime.
Overtime that day.
And they took me. That's how I ended up studying architecture.
Wow.
To this day, I regret not coming to KNUS, to tech. All my friends were in tech.
It is a good regret to have.
I regret not coming to
It is
tech.
indeed a good regret to have. I mean, but ultimately, in terms of what you sought to do, you got to do it, to become an architect.
Absolutely. No. The best thing about having moved to London was not necessarily being in London, but the exposure to different things. I got exposed to the rest of Europe,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And architecture is about observing and imbibing stuff, assimilating into not only the built environment, but the cultural environment, And I was really shaped my early days in London by, this was in the UK, those days where Margaret Thatcher was there, and there was this conflict between Labour and the unions and the coal miners' strike. I mean, all these things, as a young man, it's like, and the debate around these issues, debate. I mean, one has to really analyze things, and it's by learning different people's positions. Until this day, I'm shaped by that experience in London and the Cold War conflict. And moving to America I moved to America in '86. And it was in America that I discovered my Africanness,
So wait, you got to London in 1982.
82.
And you went through your architecture training
in 86.
And you finished in 86.
And then I moved to London to the United States.
Yeah.
It's like it seems like I follow opportunity, obviously.
Yeah.
Ghana was hard, so I moved to London.
And fortunate for you, a year after you left Ghana, there was the 83 famine.
What's it? There's something called this is no politics. So what's something?
Rawlings chain.
You missed it.
I missed it. But my mother used to write to me about Rawlings chain. So another interesting about writing. I learned how to write tree in London as a student. Those days, par avion, right? My mother would write
the postcards.
the small
airmail,
the blue thing.
That's true.
My mother would write to me in tree, so I would have to respond in tree. That's how I learned how to write tree.
Wow.
Not in Ghana.
In London. And so now you've moved to the US.
I moved to the US in '86. Again, things were hard in London, so everybody was looking for work, and I was lucky that one of my tutors at school in London was American, and he got me a job in New York City. Boy, I mean, a Ghanaian, quiet man like me, boy like me, in the heart of New York. I mean, from London, quiet London, to the hectic hustle of New York City.
The heights.
I was, again, what a great experience.
Yeah.
To be in London, to be in New York City. I learned a lot as a young architect, because I was thrown in the deep end. I was working on a job site, doing for big renovations in the big building on 7th Avenue. And my boss lived in another state, Seattle, on the West Coast, and I had to handle this construction. I'm just out of school, but I liked it because I was making some money.
Yeah,
I had some dollars in my pocket, so I could enjoy New York properly.
Yeah.
So that's what happened, and then I moved after a year in New York on the East Coast. I moved to California, LA, where I cut my teeth as an architect.
So you moved from New York to California
in 1988. Yeah.
So 2 years after.
Isn't it funny that you kind of moved from the West
and kept on moving eastwards.
Basically just went east. If you look at where New York is on the extreme end, and then
came back.
California is all the way on the other end.
No. I mean, but California was very kind to me, I must admit. I mean, as a young architect, I just landed well. Sometimes things happen for a reason, you know. I landed well, but it's not by accident. You have to also decide as a young in your career which way you want to go. I wanted always to be an activist architect, not necessarily just be in a big office and design big buildings. So I arrived in LA. My first interview was with a big Canadian firm.
Yeah.
Nice salary, you know, all those good things. Then I took a second interview in a very tiny firm, and I heard that this architect who owned this firm, he was a professor, and he was like a real activist architect about social change. You know, what architecture is not about buildings alone, but how it can impact society and humanity. Yeah. And I went for the small firm. The best thing I ever did. Less money, but gave me the confidence about architecture not being about edifice alone, but about humanity. So I've been in that space since 1988, you know?
And I want to believe that your experience in London during the time when Margaret Thatcher was there, the debates between the Labour and the Union, I mean, it properly ushered you into your political awareness to ignite that activism in you.
Absolutely. No, you know, architecture is not about politics, but it's a very political act, you know, because you're dealing with people's lives, you know. It's just, you know, the well-being of people,
the economics,
and cities and space, you know. And so, I mean, it's not, in recent times, architecture and politics gets
very murky,
gets murky and gets a bad rap. But what we do is so important, I think, especially in the developing world like Ghana, in Africa. You know, when there's an issue in this country, the first people they will call are little lawyers, right, to come and discuss. I think architects we have to make ourselves relevant enough to be called to the table, because we have a lot to offer. You know, a lot to offer in terms of economy, social change and dynamics and so forth. So
from 88, you were in this little firm in California.
And then in 91, I started my own practice. I was very lucky.
Still in California?
Still in California. I started my own practice, which is very interesting. And again, it could only have happened because I was in the little firm.
Okay.
In 91, there was a recession in the States, in California. And I was very blessed to have met a young African-American surgeon, orthopedic surgeon, who was just out of Harvard. I met him in 88, and he told me in 88 that he's going to be starting his practice very soon, and he wanted me to do two projects for him: his house and his office, his new office.
Okay.
Very modest. His office, very a modest interiors project. You know.
Yeah.
I gave it my all, but what happened because there was a recession, the small firm I was working for began to lay off some of the staff. So the boss, who was such a kind and generous spirited man, said to me, "Joe, you're busy. I can see that you are working non-stop. Why don't you take some of your colleagues and I'll give you a room in this office and you guys work from out of here." So that's how I started my practice with friends from my firm, where we all worked. And then I did the office, turned out very well. Then I got, in those days, 1991 or something, the first house project, which was in a $1.5 million house up in the hills in South LA, in Palos Verdes, which is a very swanky part of town.
Okay.
And I started working on that project with one of the senior architects in the office. And that project it got built and it became very recognized. And that was the start of my career out of that office. And this boss, his name was Bernard Zimmerman.
Okay.
He pushed my career. He really helped me to become who I am. I mean, everything I know about advocacy is from this man, Bernard Zimmerman. He was a professor of architecture. So he encouraged me to start teaching architecture. So I became a lecturer at the University of Southern California very early in my practice. In my practice, you know. So I was teaching and working. It was superb, you know. And
when did you start lecturing? At what point? Because 91 you had started your own practice.
I think in 95 or something. By 95.
Okay, so about 4 years subsequent.
Yeah, I was. But before even I started lecturing, I was involved with Bernard in doing lecture series for architects.
Okay.
At the LA County Museum.
Okay.
And it was called the Masters of Architecture. Every architect in the world who was anybody came through that series, you know. So I met everyone. You know what I mean? It's just amazing. As a young architect, and Bernard would use me to pick up these famous architects from the airport and drive them around the city, you know.
So you get to have, writing chats with them.
No, it's unbelievable. And to this day, some of these famous architects, I know them personally because of my being a chauffeur in this in LA or taking them out for dinner. You know, so and this has all shaped my life, you know.
So what I'm hearing you say is you offered yourself for,
yes.
volunteerism.
It's key. Volunteerism and internship is key to success, and that's something which I want us to talk about as relates to Ghana. You know, education is not only about the school, the university stuff.
Yeah,
I've learned a lot from my volunteerism, my internship around the place. I mean, my biggest internship was done in Helsinki, Finland in 1983 for a year. I took a year out of school to go and do my internship in Finland. And most people don't know about Finland, but Finland, I think, is the world's #1 design city. I mean, it's produced some of the best architects in the world.
Yeah.
You know, and everybody studies these architects in school, but you have to be in Finland to understand why they are great architects. You know, they love their country, and the design is a big thing. I mentioned about why we need to have architects at the table.
Yeah.
I remember in 83 or 80 something, I don't remember, I flew to Helsinki.
Yes.
And I took a taxi from the airport to the city. And the cab driver, you know, an ordinary cab driver, as we drove down, he found out I was an architect, began to tell me who designed that building, and that he knew everything about all the architects who did these buildings along the street, you know. And I thought, wow, this tells you the level of culture that the ordinary man or woman has in Finland. They love a design. It's it's part of their makeup.
Yeah.
You know?
And I so I mean you talk about the greatness of all of these people, and so we are, having left Ghana in 82,
right,
gone to London, stayed on till 86.
Yes.
But in between time, you took 1 year off to go to Helsinki, Finland.
Yes.
You returned and finished your architecture, training. Moved on to the US, to New York in 86.
Yes.
Then in 88, you get to move to California.
California, yes.
And then you decided not to work in a big firm, but in a small firm because of the advocacy opportunities that you could have there. And then in 91, you get to start your own practice.
3 years out of starting my career. Again, it's all timing. You know, it's just amazing. Looking back, and I knew, this is the classic example of learning on the job, on the project. I never designed a house in my life, and here I was with this $1.5 million house. And this young client, who till this day is my bestie. We met in 1988. So how many years is that? 30-something years ago.
Wow.
And he still visits me here in Ghana. You know? We work together. We are both learning. I was learning how to be an architect, and he was learning how to be a client and appreciate architecture, you know? And we work hand in hand on that project, which has been recognized greatly.
Yeah.
Even I enjoy this house now because of social media and technology. I Google it, and it's a wonderful video of this house that I look at it, I go, I can't believe I did this.
You designed this.
I was 27 years old or something like that, you know?
Wow.
I did this house.
Wow. So now you've started your own practice. You've gone ahead. You've even worked with this professor. You've got the opportunity to meet all of these prolific, renowned, architects. How did your private practice itself fare?
I never made any money, but I made a reputation. You know, people thought I was a fairly good designer, and then I tapped into my activist roots.
Yeah.
And I began working again for a little or no money in the black community, in Watts in particular, in LA, which is, if you Google Watts, the first thing that will pop up is the Watts riots of when Martin Luther King of 68 or something.
The riots.
You know, so it's a very rich cultural part of the city.
Yeah.
But it's underdeveloped, you know, and all those things. But I saw an opportunity in contributing to the change that needed to happen. So I was working for a foundation, like an NGO.
Yeah. And
we did a few projects for them on their campus. Then the city of this in LA, a community redevelopment agency of LA discovered my work there and hired me to do work for them too. So I was working in quote unquote in the hood, you know, in the neighborhood. But the beauty about what I was doing at the time was I was working in the black community there and also doing work in the upscale parts of LA also, like Palos Verdes. And I loved it. You know, it was fantastic. I mean, that kind of dichotomy.
Between day and night.
Yeah. But that's what makes a creative person tick. It's not about the money alone. It's about the opportunity and seeing what you can do, you know. 4 years ago, this is 2018 or 19.
Yeah.
I had opportunity to visit LA again, and I drove to the neighborhood to see one of my projects there, which was a park in Watts, and to see the trees grow, you know, everything mature, and and people are using it. I'm thinking, wow, I sketched this drawing and drew it out, and they got it built in my absence, and it looks, you know, it's like the community is using it.
Yeah.
I was very proud of myself at that moment to say, you know, it's not a fancy house, it's a park for ordinary people, and children are riding their bikes on it and sitting in the seating, you know, in the amphitheater, just, you know, one afternoon after school.
They were having fun.
So I walked to one of the, you know, it's like a gang a neighborhood, right? So when they saw me taking pictures, some of these young men were looking at me funny, you know?
Yeah.
So it's interesting. So I walked up to them and I said, "You are in my house," I told them. I said, I designed this. They said, "Really?" I said, "Yeah, this is." So I walked behind the amphitheater, the concrete wall of the amphitheater, and my name was there. It's designed by Joe Addo. I took out my ID, and they showed me so much. These gang members showed me so much respect and love. You know, they were so happy. They said, "Thank you for this." I said, "Yeah." So
wow,
the impact, you know, of some of these projects, you know.
And you know, I'm listening to your story, and I see how your eyes light up when you're talking about how some of your designs, for instance, bring a certain kind of energy to the communities where they are constructed in, and all of that. And I am hearing you talk more about the impact of your workings. And for those of you who are just joining in, we are talking to Osae Addo, a very renowned architect, and he says that he may not have made so much money because he didn't go for the money. It was more about the impact, the relevance, the activism side of designing as an architect.
Let me tell you this. Though.
Yes.
Having said this, we need to create an ecosystem where architects can make money in Ghana.
And we'll be coming to that. And so you're on the Asase Breakfast Show. We're on Road to Greatness, a segment where we get to have engagement with people who have blazed the trail, who have gone ahead and created an opportunity for others to follow as well. And this morning, we are fortunate to be joined by Osae Addo, a man who clearly, coming from the Methodist manse of his father, one-time bishop of the Methodist Church of Ghana. And so I hear you, and your interest in the activism and all of that, these things may have come from somewhere. You may have been influenced by a number of things. We want to get a sense of how your early days were like. Where were you born? How were you brought up?
Right.
What was your orientation right from the onset?
I mean, I was born in Accra, but we are from Ekropong, but I was raised in Accra.
Okay.
And I was raised always in a very religious family. My father was an Osae, and my mother was the headmistress of Richard School. Church school. So I'm in that ecosystem of,
I see,
service and spirituality and all that. So that's my background. And they tried to make me a piano player, but I hated it.
You hated it?
I took all the exams through Achimota, but I never.
You wrote what, ABRSM?
Oh, what was it? Whatever it was. Yeah, I did it to grade 8. I really went far with this thing.
Okay.
But what I hated about piano was that on Saturdays when my friends were at Labadi Beach, my piano teacher would keep me home, and I was always itching to just finish piano lessons,
enjoying them at the beach.
To La. So that's my background. So anyway,
wow.
So we grew up in different places in Accra because my father was on Osofo.
Yeah.
We lived partly in Addo because he was in charge of that circuit there. Then we were in Jamestown.
So Calvary Methodist.
No, the one at the small one at near Circle.
Okay.
The small one next to Dance Bar.
Okay.
Dance Paradise. Yes. Then we were in Jamestown in the 60s.
Where the cathedral is.
So that's because he was in charge of that.
The cathedral.
So Where's the cathedral? My early childhood was in that Jamestown neighborhood, and today I'm the owner of Jamestown, a cafe. I own in Jamestown.
Wow.
And the boys, everybody asked me, why do you? No, but if you don't know my background, they say, why do you open up a business in Jamestown, or in Ashertown? I'm the original hood boy from Egamashi. So this is is where I grew up. And then for a while, and my father's also the founder of Wesley Grammar School. Odoko.
Oh, okay.
So we are the pioneers. We lived in Odoko when there was no Dansuman. I saw the first buildings being built in Dansuman. When we went in Odoko, Odoko was a village. It was like a series of villages. There was no electricity, for example.
Okay.
So our house was one of the first houses that I remember seeing the light poles being built. Every day after school, we'd see one pole closer to our house, Like then one day that the lights came on, we couldn't believe there were no lights, in those days. Dr. Ebuzia lived very close to us, so we were the only 2 people with lights in this neighborhood. And then we moved from one part of Odoko to where Wesley Grammar Campus is now. So the campus was built around my father built the headmaster's house, where we lived, and it was like it shared a wall with Dansuman Estates. I remember this during Achampong's
time
presidency, the first Dansuman Estates being built. The other day, I tried to find where Wesley Grammar School. I was coming from Cape Coast. I drove through Odoko that way to the back, and I was shocked
how much the place has changed.
The density. And I was like, wow, this is.
I suppose the society you wanted to remember around the dance bar is Bob Freeman. Bob Freeman. Bob Freeman Methodist.
Yeah. That one.
Wow. So, but it's of interest. Typically when you hear that someone is from Ekropong, very likely to be Presbyterian.
It's an interesting story. My father is half Ga from Sempe, Jamestown, and Ekropong. So he was born in Sempe, but the story goes that when he turned 11, his father, who was in Ekropong, Ekropong, came and plucked him
from
Sempe. So then he went to Infant Spim, where he became a Methodist.
So that explains it.
He became,
So you came from a very structured family,
absolutely,
where there was a certain deliberateness about how you were brought up. In terms of some of the values that even now influence how you do your things, what would you say were some of such values which were imbibed in you right from your upbringing, eventually demonstrating itself in your
humility? I tell people now, when we used to sit at the lunch table or breakfast table with my parents, and we would talk about other people's families. In those days, in the 70s and 80s or 60s, You would never hear somebody say, "Oh, this family have money," or this, or in your nyam, which means you have dignity. You know, that's how we talk. You know, in my house, money was not. Of course, we knew people who had money. I went to a Richard school where the elite went to school,
people had
so
money,
we know people had money. But that's not the yardstick. You know, it's about the dignity of a family. You know.
And so those were some of the things which shaped how you proceeded moving on in life.
Absolutely.
And even becoming, and that's why you sought more of activism as opposed to seeking wealth.
I'm seeking wealth now in my 60s, you know. I knew that I would live a long life. I could seek wealth at the right time, you know.
Interesting. So when did you now decide to come back to Ghana? And I mean, between this 90-something story that we are talking about, and whenever you decided to come back to Ghana, what were you doing in the US?
So I was practicing very actively, and I got married. I got, started my family and all that. And in 2004, let me step back for a minute. In 2000, I was my mother all this time in the 90s was with us in the States.
Okay. And
then in 99, she decided to come back to Ghana. So I visited Ghana for the first time in a long time in 99.
After you left in 82?
82, I think I came one short holiday in 86. And
after you finished your architecture program?
And then 87, my father passed. I came for the funeral. Then that was it. So I had these short stints of 1 week, 2 weeks in Ghana. So Accra was far from my plans.
87 was the last time.
Time. And then in 99, my mother moved back to we actually our family house was just up the street, 4th Circular.
Okay.
So my mother moved back, and I took a holiday and came to help her fix up the house. She left the house abandoned for 20 years, you know. So I came to quickly fix it. I remember the day I arrived from the airport, I was already demolishing stuff in the kitchen, you know, already. with the security man, we were just tearing things apart. So and I said, wow, this is Accra is great.
Yeah.
So I came back in 2000. And in 2000, that was the turning point. I arrived in Accra, and it was during the elections.
Yes.
And the results. So I was in President Ekufuor's house when the elections were read. My mother is good friends with President Ekufuor. So I was in the house when CNN barged in and announced that he had won. I think there was a runoff, wasn't there?
Yeah.
So I was hooked. I said, well, this is fantastic. I mean, here I am at the center of the action, and I want to come back. It took me 4 years to decide to move back.
Finally come back.
So I moved back in 2004. Because, all the euphoria about democracy and change and all those good things, I was hooked.
Wow. So you finally returned in 2004. And you came to Accra. And you stayed here in Accra because you mentioned that you were somewhere in, is it
Tamale?
Is it Tamale you mentioned, where you were wearing your white, that they were calling you Mr. White?
No, that's Elmina.
That'll be Elmina,
that's
exactly.
That's more recently, because I was doing a project there.
Okay.
But when I arrived in 2004, I was very keen to work at the local level with the assembly. So I reached out to the then mayor of Accra, I've forgotten his name, and then Jacob Obetibi Lamte. So I did some studies on
2004.
Accra. Yeah, 2004.
Is it Honorable Blankson?
I worked with Addo also, but before there was a man who had an Equapin type name.
Oh, okay.
What's his name? Anyway, Addo Blankson too. And and so I've always been in touch with every mayor, trying to figure how Accra can work better. Accra is great, but we can do a lot to make it even better, as a city. But in 2005, I decided to open up my practice in Tamale, Accra.
In Tamale?
In Tamale. So President Kufuor hooked me up with the then mayor, who's now, I think, a minister, or what's the minister, deputy minister of energy, Amin Anta.
Okay.
Who was then the mayor of Tamale. So I moved to Tamale to help him look at how we can improve Tamale in terms of planning and branding and so forth and so forth. So I did that from 2005 to 2008. Then Anta left, and then I left too. So for me, the city or the towns are very important as an architect to really engage how we can make them work better.
And I'm happy you bring this up. And we'll be wrapping up the conversation very soon. So being an architect, and I hear you saying a lot that architects are supposed to be agents of like change
and vision and
visionaries, vision. And it sits very well in that legal school of thought propounded by Roscoe Pound that law, for instance, is supposed to be a tool for social engineering. And I'm hearing you say a lot that architecture is supposed to be used as such. Having lived and worked in the US, trained in the UK, worked in the US significantly back to Ghana, what do you see is the problem when it comes to using architecture to shape the lives that we live here in Ghana?
I wouldn't I never see things as problems. So I wouldn't say it's a problem. But what we must do, and I think we have to be more proactive as architects, is to let society know what we do, what we are. I don't know if you talk to many people in Accra, I would assume they don't even know what an architect does. I think it's up to us architects to really engage better with society. Let them know that we are here to serve,
Yeah.
We are not pompous and
or high and above.
No, not at all. And we need to, everything in Ghana is tied to politics. We have to let our political leaders recognize the real importance of who we are and what we do. Because you will never be accepted until you accept yourselves. We have to recognize that we are a special breed of character or personality. Our training allows us to think in a myriad of ways, We're very blessed that way.
A former manager of mine used to say, nobody will be able to say thou art unless you learn to say I am.
I am, yeah.
And I think that's very, very important. You sounded very passionate about internships, volunteerism. I want us to talk about that briefly.
Yes.
What is it about internships or volunteerism that makes you so passionate about the subject?
Well, two things. First of all, it's not only what the intern will learn, but I've been very blessed to have interns in my office in Accra who to this day have impacted how I think about who I am as an architect. I had a German intern, Hans Sachs, in 2006, 7 or something, who to this day, some of the documents he produced, I use as my portfolio,
Wow.
The packaging of it and others. So it's not only what we impart to them, for a young architect, as I think I touched on this earlier, going to university is just the first step. The next 3 years out of school is critical in shaping who you're going to become, what you learn from the office, not only from the office projects, but even your colleagues in the office, people your age that you are kind of bantering with and sharing ideas with, and so forth. So
very, very important.
Very, very important.
Internships.
So I must give myself a little bit of a plug here. One of the things I've done, which I'm very proud of in Ghana, is rewarding some of my interns with internships in Europe.
Wow.
We've taken. I have a friend in Rotterdam.
Yeah.
Netherlands. Holland, Dutch architect who's very successful. And many years ago, he said to me, "Joe, why don't you send some of your?" He came to my office in Accra. Why don't you bring some of your people to come to Rotterdam for 3 to 6 months?
Wow.
We've been doing this for the last 7 or 8 years.
And you bring people from Rotterdam as well.
So listen to this. So now I've expanded this thing to be historically black ecologists in America.
Okay.
So this year, for the first time, we have a student from Morgan State University, Baltimore, interning in Accra at the firm of Hussein Fakri, the key architects. Internships are tricky because the firms have to be able to afford to
keep you.
Not only keep them, but house them, fly them in.
Yeah.
So I must give a kudos to people like Hussein. I want to expand this, but you can only do this if there's a thriving ecosystem for architects. Because we cannot afford to fly somebody in, or even from Kumasi bring in a young intern and take care of them for 3 to 6 months if there's no business, So I would encourage.
So you're literally running an exchange program.
It is basically that, and I'm hoping to expand this in the coming year. The first intern from the States just arrived. He's here. I just met him last week.
Wow.
And we really want to make this, because this young man from the States is meeting young architects from KNUST or Central, and it's a lifelong friendships, and this is important part of the training too. I've made lifelong friendships which have served me well for 40 years,
Wow. And I mean, of course, you mentioned someone like even Hans.
Yes.
Who was an intern of
Hans
yours.
is now a big professor in Germany at some university. He keeps inviting me to come and give a lecture there.
Wow. Lifelong relationships.
That's right.
And you had spoken about some of the architecture conferences that you were even given the opportunity working with the professor Bernard. Yes, Bernard Zimmerman. And we are learning of a certain art competition which is to be happening in Paris.
Yes. So this is last week I was interviewed by a 17-year-old student from Lincoln School.
Okay.
And the best thing that came out of that interview that I remember was I told her, I haven't met a good architect who's not a good artist yet in my life. So now let's come to this. This year I am proud to say I'm directing a children's arts competition.
Okay.
And it's not only Ghana, it's a worldwide competition.
Okay.
But I'm handling the Ghana
side of it.
And it's being organized by an NGO in Washington, D.C. called ICAF, International Children's Arts Foundation.
Okay.
And they've been doing this for a long time. But they're doing this cycle of competition is dedicated around how we see sports.
Yeah.
And the winners of this competition will be exhibited at the Paris 2024 Games. So I'm hoping that we can take some of our winners to Paris.
Wow.
To next year, 2024.
Wow.
So, but this is, again, is not in isolation. In 1968, when I was a child at Richard School, there was this same competition organized globally.
Yeah.
And one of the pupils in Richard School, who's now 60-something years old, called Mr. Nostad Amatefio. He's a planner.
Okay.
He was a great artist as a child. He didn't do architecture, which is to the chagrin of a lot of his classmates who are now architects.
But he still went to KNUST.
Yeah, he went to KNUST and did planning instead.
The College of Architecture and Planning, as they used to call it.
Yeah,
some call it actually the College of Architect Agony and Pain.
Agony and Pain, eh?
Me say, they sleep in the studio.
So Nosti Amatefio won this competition as a child, 1968.
Yeah.
And he went to Mexico City as a child. I remember this very well. We're all very envious. But anyway. So this is not, I'm saying this is not the first time this arts thing is
going to be coming up. Yeah.
And I just heard the great story that in 2018, to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Mexico Games, the Mexican government carried out a worldwide search for all the winners, the children of that era. And Nosti Amatefio was found in Accra by the Mexican ambassador to Ghana and was awarded, presented with his original artwork of 68, beautifully framed.
Wow.
He hadn't seen it since 1968.
Wow.
The Mexican government brought it to Accra, to him in Accra, framed. I have a picture of it here. It's, so these, again, talking about lifelong experiences. To this day, Nosti, I wish he was here to talk about it some more. I'm going to be doing a short YouTube video with him to describe this thing as part of my marketing of this competition.
So it's ICAF, which is the International Children's Art Foundation, which will be coming off in Paris.
Well, the exhibition will be coming. Well, the exhibition, the winners will be taken to Paris from all over the world. Yes.
Okay. And there's the Ghana bit which you are seeing too.
Yes.
And the ultimate winner.
I'm working with the French embassy here actually.
Okay. Yes. Beautiful. And this will be happening. It's been beautiful talking to you. I suppose that the mayor you were trying to remember is Solomon Ofedako.
You just googling this right now.
We have a way. We have our ways.
I've been thinking about his name for
Solomon Ofedako.
I've been thinking about this man for the past week.
Yes.
What is his name? Nobody seems to remember.
No. Kweku just reminded me. Kweku
great.
Shadow reminded me about that.
Yes. So I worked with him.
Yeah.
I had just come. I was so anxious keen to contribute.
Yeah. Thank you so much for making time to talk to us. And I believe for all those who have listened to your story, a certain sense of patriotism, of humility. You speak about that.
Right.
Seeking dignity over just riches. Don't
overplay this riches part because
right now you are seeking the riches.
I'm seeking the riches now, so I don't want to be somebody to look at me and say, this guy, don't mind him. He drives all the fancy cars in town and blah blah.
Maybe
blah, blah,
some other time we'll have time to talk about Mr. White.
Yes.
And as you promised, off we can talk a little bit about your relationship with Ken Oferiata and about the White. but our guest has been Mr. Joe Osae Addo, who hails from Ekropong.
Yes.
And having spoken to us.
But let me give one more plug to. I studied at Achimota Secondary School, Motown.
Motown
really changed my life in terms of being an architect. Motown has one of the best arts departments.
Yes.
So most of the architects of my generation, who went to Motown, studied art.
Yes.
So art was very.
Ut omnis unum sint.
Yes.
That all may be one.
That's
John
right.
17:21, the prayer of Jesus Christ.
I didn't even know that.
Oh yes, it is.
Really? Okay.
Yes, it is, and it's actually the motto for the Presbyterian Church of Ghana.
Okay.
That they all may be one.
Okay. Thanks for teaching me a thing or two about my own school.
Yes.
And wait, this year.
Yes.
Actually, next week, September 21st.
Yeah.
My year group, we are celebrating 50 years of coming to first year. From
1982 year group of Achimota School.
Is it 82? Yes.
82.
Yeah.
1982.
No.
Year.
70. We are 72, isn't it?
No, that'll be 82. You left Ghana in 82.
Yeah, but I'm saying first arriving from one.
From one. Okay.
From one.
Okay. All right. And so this is a special dedication to Mr. Joe Osae Addo.
I'm not the mayor yet.
Joe Osae Addo. This is a special one. Who's your guy? And we especially.
I love this song because it's about friendship.
It's about friendship.
I mean, we have to have each other's back. Is this my DJ here?
Yeah. Yes.
DJ.
Yes.
Give me some Spyro and
Spyro.
Savage. Right,
that's right.
Thank you for watching. Like, comment, share, and subscribe.